Okay, so how's it going, guys? This is Ryo Murata, photographer based in Tokyo. So, this is another topic that I really wanted to discuss with you guys, is talking about adapters for film camera lenses, for maybe film cameras, or maybe a digital mirrorless camera. And long story short, a while ago, I made a video of visiting a contacts shop, aka old lens shop based in Shinjuku, which is Gokurakudo. And while I was going there frequently, I went there like a couple of times actually, I was like curious, there might be people out there who want you to use contact lenses on non-contact bodies, or there might be like Nikon AIS lenses that people might want to use it on non-Nikon bodies, etc, etc. So this is sort of like an educational video of how to do it. It's not too complicated, so hopefully this video is not too long, but yeah, buckle in, guys. So yeah, we're going to be talking about adapters for film camera lenses. And what you need is only one item, which is a simple item, which is called a lens mount adapters. It's like really simple. You can find them almost everywhere, but I purchased mine from Amazon. Any kind of manufacturer would work actually, but right now, because Amazon's my sort of like true friend right now, I purchased mine from Amazon from a brand called K&FConcept. I think their real name is Keith and Faith or something, some weird name, but this video is not being sponsored by them, so I can say whatever I want. But these lens adapters cost roughly $10 to $20, $25, depending on what kind of type you get. And it basically, what it does, it kind of converts that lens mount into the camera lens mount that you are trying to use. And this is going to be sort of like an explanation type of video. So there was a specific lens that I wanted to use, which is a Fujifilm's sort of like old EBC lens, and I basically wanted to use that on a Fujifilm mirrorless camera because I was curious how it would look. And this video is going to be probably on that lens, going to be in my future video. So yeah, just stay put, guys. No heavy breathing. But you have to understand first like what your lens mount is, and then what the camera that you're going to be using is, in order to like purchase the correct one. Because if you mess this up, you won't be able to mount that lens onto the film camera or mirrorless camera. So let's say this EBC lens that I have right now, that was produced during the film era. If you guys probably do not know, Fujifilm used the M42 mount. However, if you guys know about mirrorless, about Fujifilm, they use an mount called the X mount, which is completely different diameter. So I basically need to stick an adapter in between them for it to work. And basically, if you go to Amazon or any kind of like website, let's say K&FConcept, because they are almost everywhere in Japan actually, when you go and just type in lens adapter under the search area in Amazon, their product will pop out. You click on that, and they basically have like 20 like different sort of like lens adapter variations. I won't cover every single one of them because it's like mind-boggling, but do your research beforehand. But I will just cover the brief area, I guess the most important one. But when you look at these lens adapters, the first initial is what the lens mount is, and the second initial in most cases is what the body mount is. So let's say for me, I want to convert this EBC Fujinon lens to my Fujifilm lens. It would be M42 / FX. FX stands for Fujifilm's like mount, the X mount, Fujifilm's X mount. So that's basically what it means. So the first initial is on the lens side, and the second initial is on the body side. In addition to that, NIK is Nikon, C is Canon, PK is, if I'm right, Pentax, CNY probably is most important for some people, is Contax Yashica mount. So depending on what you want to convert, you have to like research beforehand what that mount is, and then the camera side, and you got that lens adapter. Attaching the lens adapter to the lens and to the camera is super simple. The easiest way of doing it is you take the lens adapter and the lens, take off the back, sort of like what I call a cap, screw in, I guess clockwise if I'm right into the lens adapter, and then from there you mount the adapter with the lens into the camera last. And there's people out there who actually take out their camera first, take off the what we call a cap on the body, and then add the adapter and then the lens. Do not do that from a photographer's standpoint. The reason why is that when you actually change lenses, especially for the digital camera, you want the camera tilted down, because if you attach the lens sideways on a desk, particles, dirt, dust can enter the camera into the CMOS sensor, and once it lands onto the CMOS sensor, it is painfully hard to extract that. And in most cases, if you do it by yourself, you'll scratch the CMOS sensor, and that's going to cost more than $1,000 to repair, so don't do that. So when you're sort of like changing lenses for mirrorless cameras or digital cameras, I highly suggest tilting it downwards so that all the dust particles goes on top of the behind the LCD screen. It won't enter the camera itself. You want that to happen. So the easiest way of doing that is tilting the camera down, remove the lens cap from the adapter and the lens, have that attached first, and then screwing in towards the camera body facing down in there, and that's how you do it. So yeah, I'll stick in some like BTS of how to do it for your information. That's the safest way of doing it actually. So yeah, that's basically it of attaching of an old lens using an adapter onto a mirrorless camera. And the way of attaching it is exactly the same for film cameras. I don't have a Fujifilm's like what I call film camera that's like interchangeable, but the same principle applies. If I'm using a Nikon, if I want to use this EBC lens on a Nikon camera, I need to purchase another lens adapter that's like NIK slash M42 slash NIK. Yeah, that's the way it is. So yeah, if I have that adapter, I can basically use this EBC lens on my Nikon camera. But right now, I currently use the 50mm 1.8 AIS, which is not going anywhere from my Nikon camera. So probably I'm not gonna be using it on my Nikon camera, but that option is available. Yeah, I kind of like forgot to mention that because I sort of like attached this to a non-film camera. If it's a film camera, you won't have any issues, but if it's a digital camera, in most cases you have to go into the menus. For the Fujifilm side, you have to like uncheck or check that you're using a manual lens, because in some cases cameras don't fire when they don't sense a lens being attached. And because this is an old lens that does not have any like mechanical like circuits that can communicate with the camera body itself, you basically have to turn that off so you can basically shoot. So yeah, on the Fujifilm side, and probably on various other Nikon or Canon and maybe Sony, you have to like toggle that area in the menu section that you're using a manual lens. So yeah, most important part that I completely missed out on for these mount adapters for old lenses, there's two types if I'm right. One cheap ones that I first purchased was the K&FConcept that I recently just mentioned, which is roughly $10 or $15. Nothing much. However, I learned later for my EBC Fujinon lenses, the aperture ring does not move at all when using the more inexpensive K&FConcept $10 mount adapters. And I realized later that in order for this sort of like Fujinon lens with what you call the aperture ring to move, you have to have the pin engaged when it's sort of like mounted onto a Fujifilm's, ST type of what you call SLRs, if I'm right. And this might apply to various types of old lenses. I cannot vouch on the various types of lenses because I never tried them. So if it doesn't work on the cheaper what you call lens mount, chances are you need to actually invest in the more expensive ones that can sort of like engage that aperture ring for it to move around. And a way around for this to make it happen is obviously I have to purchase another lens adapter. And this time around, I was basically talking with a person who basically sold the lens, the EBC lens, which was at Gokurakudo, and they know more than I do. And they basically said that the shortcut to this is basically purchasing a lens mount adapter by Shoten, which is actually, you can purchase it from Shashinki Kitamura actually in Shinjuku, and the people at Gokurakudo who were really great, they know the expertise. They said that if you go to Shashinki Kitamura shop in Shinjuku, they basically have every single mount adapter made by Shoten. So that's actually where I went. I basically purchased more expensive actually lens mount by Shoten, and if I'm right, Shoten is a aka as known as Shoten Kobo, and they're a super reliable actually mount adapter maker in the sort of like the premium marketplace, and you can purchase one for roughly 4,000 yen, so that's roughly $30 or so. And I basically purchased the M42 to the X mount adapter for this video actually, but unfortunately this isn't a sort of like a review type of video. It's more like these types of lens mounts are available, so you can basically purchase it if you have sort of like an old lens that doesn't work using a really cheaper Waiko lens mount. So I basically purchased the Shoten for you guys, and as you can tell, it actually, the aperture ring moves freely, butterly smooth, just joking, with clicks actually. So yeah, and one thing to note, this isn't sort of like a review, it's more like a sort of like a video just on this mount adapter kind of thing, is that the Shoten variation, the width actually is much more fatter than the K&FConcept cheaper like lens mount, and also there's a little bit of a spacing in between the aperture ring, so it moves freely, unlike the what we call the K&FConcept. That one is like fully flush, and once you sort of like twist that lens M42 lens onto the K&FConcept, it basically doesn't move. The aperture ring doesn't move. However, the Shoten actually moves freely. So if you have an issue regarding that, the lens itself, the aperture ring doesn't move, chances are you're using actually cheaper sort of like lens mount adapters, and you have to purchase the more expensive one that's roughly $30 or so. So that's one area to note. Basically, on talking about using a lens adapter of sort of like adapting old lenses to a film camera or maybe a mirrorless camera in my case, and honestly it's not that hard at all. You just basically screw it in and just mount it on, and you're just good to go in most cases. And it's good to have just one or maybe two adapters if you know, if you own, or if you're thinking of owning one old lens. That's basically how you can do it. And I'm gonna go a little bit off topic for the K&FConcept. This video is not being sponsored or anything, but because I purchased the cheapest one, they have actually a more expensive one that costs twice as much, like $30 or so for a lens adapter. I was looking at myself and I was like, do I need this kind of? But I was looking at the more expensive ones, what's the main difference? But the main difference of the more expensive ones from K&FConcept is that there's basically a lever that kind of locks the lens in, because if you like mount a typical lens onto a camera, you know you had to press a button to unlock and then you can twist it off, you know. The cheaper version, you don't have that. You're basically screwing it in, which means that there's a chance that it might unscrew and kind of go, it could like drop or something like that. So the more expensive one has a sort of like a stopper to negate that from happening, from dropping out. And also the more expensive ones, if I'm right, the inner barrel of the adapter is like super pitch black, so you won't get some kind of like reflection going into the camera sensor. And when that happens, I guess the more cheaper ones have like thinner, like I guess black like paint. It could reflect and it can cause like ghosting and flares and stuff like that. But yeah, that's an area to point out. So depending on if you don't like having ghosting, flares, and those kinds of like less contrast going on in your photos, I guess the more expensive adapters can prevent that from happening. And also the ruggedness of the build quality will go significantly higher if you pay extra. So that's basically the main difference between the cheaper ones and also the more expensive ones. And yeah, hey, that's basically it on my video of talking about lens adapters. Not too hard to grasp, but hopefully helpful for you guys. Like if you guys want to use some kind of old lens from a various manufacturer, there is always a way of mounting it onto the camera that you're using. So yeah, And unlike like 10-20 years ago, which these, I guess, lens mount were super expensive, I mean, there's a lot of like brands that make it for really affordable prices, like K&FConcept. So yeah, even if you purchase the cheap ones, it's like test or trial. It's like trial and error. You know, you never know what you will get from trying this method. You might get better images probably by using a different manufacturers. And there's a lot of people who like to use the Pentax Takumar lenses on various camera manufacturer bodies. So yeah, it's easy to hop on to different like bandwagons and trains, and yeah, you can basically like adapt it to various like mounts. So yeah, that's hopefully I made some kind of a contribution on this field. If you have any questions, I'm happy to reply. And if you have any questions, yeah, or any comments, or I'm kind of curious what kind of lenses adapting sort of like combo are you guys like trying out. I would love to hear from you guys, because yeah, there's a lot of like discoveries of like there's no perfect like combination of camera and lens, but it's more like, you know, testing and trying to see what works and what doesn't work. So yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace out.